you wrote 300 LinkedIn posts by hand without AI. Is that true? No AI involved at all?
Absolutely true.
I actually treat myself as two people. I have the writer, Christine, and the editor, Christine, and I will never post something the same day. Authenticity is important because it attracts people to you. So if you're a brand and you're looking for people for ideal customers, being authentic can help you do that. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Christine.
So glad to have you with me. So if you've ever thought of content that you're doing as, too polished, too robotic, doesn't really sound like you, well, Nicole's going to be the one you want to talk to because she is a storyteller, content strategist, and she's been over a decade, I believe, helping founders and brands really help them find their voice. And I really wanted to sit down with her today and talk about this because I truly believe, and you probably do if you're listening to this episode, that your own voice is your biggest advantage, especially right now. So you've heard the buzzword authenticity, but we're going to deep dive into what it actually means and how you can apply this to the content and, make it sound like yourself. So Nicole, what got you interested in authenticity anyway? You pitched me and you said, hey, I want to chat with you. And I said, you know what? This sounds really interesting. And it's something I think about a lot as a content creator. So why is it something you care so much about?
Well, I actually pitched you because I found you super authentic and really relatable.
Thank you.
And actually, you were somebody I began admiring on LinkedIn, and you kept popping up in my feed. And I thought, who is this Christine speaking so much from the heart and so much from lived experience? And so you are actually somebody that personifies this aspect of authenticity. So it's something I've probably always innately done. And I didn't actually know that it was something that people needed or craved or wanted to incorporate into their content. And I started to see that this was something that I could, market when I got my first job in a tech company 6 years ago. I'm a Canadian expat who now lives in Berlin and always worked in public service jobs. So like in the public sector, I worked for an Olympic organizing committee, a Commonwealth Games, which is actually the Pan Am Games in North America. And I also worked for the Ministry of Energy. And when I got into a tech company, I had to take very dry, boring language and turn it into something that people could relate to. And what I started to do was tap into, really old school storytelling and narratives and putting people actually on a platform. And this was something that had not been done in the startup that I was in. So it was really about putting people to people. Because
it's really interesting.
It's all about that.
Didn't mean
No,
to cut you
go
off.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying, you were in the energy industry and Olympics and then tech, and it seems like some of those may be the hardest places to really be authentic and put the human first. So that's really interesting. Can you share more about like how you started to do that?
Thank you. That's what it was. So in a lot of these roles, I was hired in like a communications position or like a content writer, content editor. And a lot of times I would get into these companies and they'd say, just make it sound good. Just make, as you know, if anyone's worked in writing and editing, we just want it to sound good. Can you punch it up? Can you make it punchy? And instead of just putting in more superfluous language or just putting a lot of telling, I just started to show people into the story. So creating characters with the people with actually in each organization and giving them a bit of a spotlight and a bit of a platform and a bit of a chance to shine, because that is what connects customers with your brand, whether you're selling a product or a service or what have you.
I think that something we come back to as marketers a lot is like just show instead of tell. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. We will cover a lot of how to do it, but since you're talking about your actual experience with the different places you've worked over the years, is there any example that comes to mind and like how you were able to show something as part of the storytelling?
Absolutely. One of my first roles as a web writer, it was at a big financial brand in Toronto, Canada called Invesco. And one of my roles was to start a company blog about what our mutual fund advisors were doing. And a lot of the content was about how I bought X shares and how I found this, and this is where you should invest your money. And I said, wait a minute, I know there's an advisor here that goes to Africa twice a year and actually goes to these places where people are working gold mines, for example, and is in the trenches and is actually there talking to the people people on the ground actually literally digging for gold, literally digging for gold. So I said, why don't we take his experiences from the minute he steps on the plane to when he comes back to Canada from Africa and do like a travel blog, actually not even selling the product, not even talking about what these shares are worth, etc. So not even going into sales at all, and just keeping it about education, inspiration, information, and just planting sort of a story, like a colorful picture in the reader's mind, and keeping sales completely out of it. So that's
That's so
one example.
interesting. Was it well received by the team? Like, were you able to execute that idea? And like, I'm sure it was not an easy road when people are used to that type of traditional communications. We'll call it, I don't know, the thing that they're used to.
It was not easy at all. And I got so much pushback, especially from the VP of marketing at the time. It says, this is so far from sales. How is this going to work? However, the advisor loved it and our customers absolutely loved it. And I remember we got tons of comments on a blog. This was about 10 years ago now. And people were like, hey, we want to know more. When are you going on this trip? You know, that sort of thing. So people felt a connection. So it's about creating a connection wherever you can in the most human-centric way.
So your background is so interesting, and you've been, in communications and content this whole time. So I want to talk about, how do you go about developing that, or I guess, either finding your voice or uncovering that, whether it's a brand or an individual. So I know that you've worked with other brands or you've worked with founders. So where do you start? How do you start this if you're looking at someone that wants to get in touch with that authentic voice?
Most founders I work with and speak to, and C-level, I work with a lot of this. I work a lot in the C-suite as well. So I've also worked as a ghostwriter in pretty much every role that I've had. And most people know that they should be on places like LinkedIn. As we know, blogs are kind of dying. They no longer have the pull that they once did. And most of the work I get now is writing for people on LinkedIn. Most people are so shy to tell anything, and they're afraid that it might not be good enough, or they might not be saying the right thing or doing the right thing. So one of the first things I would do is sit down with the founder, like we're doing right now, even having a virtual coffee or an in-person coffee, and asking them why they do what they do. What makes them excited when they wake up in the morning? What is it about their role that they love the most? How is their job actually helping people? And we start by having a conversation and understanding really what their core purpose is and what their values are. And that's usually the best place to start. And even it can be as simple as, hey, what is the best thing that happened to you last week and why? And then placing that in sort of like a way that their customers will understand who they are, what they stand for, and what they represent.
I really like that you're starting with something deeper, like the why or the values, because I think everything can be drawn back to that, like that sort of core. Because a lot of times you have content that may seem unrelated, but I think if it ties back to that why, that is one way something could be authentic. Even for myself, I tend to have like 3 content pillars. I try to talk about certain topics, and sometimes there'll be something I want to talk about, and it does connect to something deeper, so it makes it still relevant. So you sit down with the founder or whoever you're working with, C-level. Is it hard for people that you mentioned this fear of not sure if they can say that, what they can say. Like, how do you overcome that to really get to the why? Because that's where the good stuff is, the stuff that's a bit more vulnerable and that may be on the other side of that fear of sharing it.
Absolutely. I'm also a meditation guide. So I also do a lot of guided meditations, and I've brought that into pretty much every company I've been in the last 7 years. So a lot of times it first starts with, just being here now. And instead of getting so taken down by, okay, what's next? God, I did this so crappy yesterday. It's usually about stepping out of automatic pilot, because we're always on automatic pilot. And if you have a family, if you have people you're supporting, and if you have, maybe you're just in a crazy, like a weird position in your life where you are responsible for others, sometimes you forget who you are, what you stand for, and why you are actually here. So a lot of times it could just be like, we start with a 3-minute breath space. Hey, let's let go of yesterday. Let's not go into tomorrow. And it's usually 3 minutes, get on the page. Okay. Then we start with connecting to, who am I? Who am I without this job title? Who am I without these responsibilities, with these roles? And eventually there is something inside that wants to say, hey, actually, you know what? I love drawing pictures and sharing with people my ideas in doodles. Okay, that's besides the point. But who am I without all these masks and job titles? So it usually starts with conversation. Who would you want to have dinner with if you could have dinner with anyone right now? What is your favorite food? What is a place you like to travel to? What is your favorite book? And keeping it really light in the beginning so that you establish some kind of common ground without there being like, okay, I have to talk about this, and I am going to be I'm a CEO, so I should be talking about this and that, but more like letting your guard down a little bit. And who are you without that job title? That's what connects people to people. And so what I like to do is create a really safe space for that expression to actually come out quite naturally. So I combine sort of these mindfulness techniques with traditional storytelling and journalistic writing.
Well, I love that. And it also reminds me, if you are working with someone, it sounds like it's not a one and done type of thing. It's like it may take a few sessions to really get to that. And so I also think that if you're working with clients, you're going to have better results if you're able to work with them a little bit more long term, to be able to create something that's not just, oh, create me a viral post. And then you can't really do that in one go. It does take some time, and building that trust with that person. So yeah, is that correct? Like it takes a little bit of time to truly get there?
I love that you actually tied it back to that, Christine, because sometimes it's hard for me to articulate what it actually is, but it's really about psychological safety, creating a psychologically safe space for people to actually feel safe enough to share their shortcomings or failures, because we all have them. And I actually don't even like to use the word failures, but for someone to share their trials or their tribulations or their, stumbling blocks, as well as the highlights. So it's not just about a highlight reel, it's about vulnerability and authenticity, but it's about creating psychological safety and it's all relationship building is what it is.
Yeah.
Is what
Really
it
getting
is.
to know someone.
Really getting to know someone.
I think with AI now, you can create someone's voice very, very accurate. I mean, it's getting more and more accurate that you can take everything someone's written, create someone's voice. But I think that the part that you can't see with, like, let's say you're creating a custom prompt, you can't see that side of someone that they haven't shown publicly. And so I think that's really interesting as you're working with anyone, whether it's a founder, a brand, or as you're trying to get to something that's a little bit deeper. I think this work is very important, truly getting to know someone, like something AI can't replace. AI is helpful, of course, but not at that level. I think that's where it stops. Do you have anything that comes to mind in terms of, like, I'm sure AI is a big topic to you, but like, do you use it, or what the limitations are when it comes to authenticity specifically?
I absolutely use AI. And one of the things I share with founders or people that are pressed for time, that want to have more of a stronger online presence, is to start actually adding their voice into whatever AI tool they're using. For me, I use ChatGPT Pro because it's just the easiest for me. And getting your voice out. So using it like a diary or a journal, and getting your voice out there and just speaking, forgetting about the writing part and the formatting and making it look perfect, right? It's really always about that shitty first draft. It's really about a brain dump. Hey, this is what's happening today, and this is how it made me feel. So really pick up things like, how did it make you feel? What did the environment look like? Think about sensory details. Show your reader, show your listener details they could not pick up in AI. Today I was with Christine in Taipei, and the streets were buzzing, the, food was grilling on the street. It was like, and really start painting those pictures, and just voicing it. And then what you can do from that is AI is really great as taking big clumps of brain dump information and say, hey, what is the most, salient point here? Or what is the most useful thing that my customer who wants to, save time and money could benefit from this sort of thing? So finding those little nuggets out of your own sharing, really.
Yeah. So I think I'm hearing the first phase of really sort of getting to understand yourself. Let's just talk about yourself if you want to do this for yourself. Understanding your why and what makes you authentic. But part of doing that, you can use AI to do that. You can brain dump, you can sort of like put all of that content out there that comes from you, because you're trying to figure out like what makes sense and what would be something that you'd want to turn into, I guess, the next layer, which would be content or something that you want to share. So since we're on the topic of AI, I want to go to the opposite, because I read somewhere that you wrote 300 LinkedIn posts by hand without AI. Is that true? No AI involved at all?
Absolutely true.
Okay. Well, Why did you do that? Or what were you trying to do with that exercise? What did you learn from the process?
That was one of the highlights of my careers as a content marketer. So I was with Uberall, which is now it's a very successful scale up, one of Germany's biggest success stories for B2B SaaS. And I was hired to come in and basically rewrite their entire website and make it customer centric and something digestible. So to take this very interesting tool and make it so that, someone like you, Christine, all the way in Taiwan could see like, hey, maybe this could be something of useful for somebody that I know. So make it actually something your grandmother could understand. And we had about a year of that. We rebuilt the brand. We built up all our content. We worked with freelancers. We had this whole library of really great stuff, blogs, white paper, reports, you name it. It just felt like I felt like I was running a magazine, and we were sitting on literally just thousands and thousands of words. This is all before AI. So this is real researched, really great stuff. And I said to our VP of marketing at the time, nobody sees our content. Nobody sees our content. Nobody knows what we do. Everybody, the sales team is like, what does marketing do? They just write content that doesn't help us actually create sales. So I thought, how can we as marketers enable our sales teams to actually get more visibility on the brand? And we didn't have a lot of budget. So I just had this idea. And I said, what if we just started posting about our content on LinkedIn? And what if we don't tell people to just download this or read our white paper? What if we share actual perspectives about the content and how it can actually help our customers do their jobs better? So more like a jobs to be done approach. And what if we give them snippets about our culture, who we are as people? Maybe what we did on the weekend and how it kind of ties into what we do. And so they said, okay, if you can make this work, do it. We'll figure it out. And I got our social media manager on board. And I said, will you just let me run the company LinkedIn and let me just recruit people who want to build their brand online and also get more visual presence on our brand as well. So we had a team we called them soldiers at the time. And I didn't coin that term. There was about 10 of us that posted for, I think it was 7 months we did this, but I wrote all the posts.
You know what? That doesn't surprise me because I've tried to run employee advocacy programs. There's different names for them. It's hard when you're working with non-marketers or people who have other things to do because their job is not marketing. You wrote all 300 posts.
All of them.
And then how did you hand them out? Did they have to tweak them to make them sound like them a little, the person posting it sound like a little bit like their own voice?
Yes.
This is an incredible initiative, and it ran for 7 months.
It ran for 7 months. Yeah. And one of the accolades I got at the end from another one of my managers at the time, she goes, I've never seen such consistency in anybody that I've worked with, because it really was a marathon. But I believed in it so much that to me, it was the most fun I've ever had in content in my life. And you just watched it. We went from 0 to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. And then we were able to track it from LinkedIn to how many people actually went to our website. And it was just hundreds of people were getting there. We had posts go viral, and it really actually brought the whole team and company together, so much so that I was sort of given an honorary position as being part of the people and culture team as well. So I was working a lot with our HR team too. So our content pillars were everything for sales, customer stories, culture, blogs, helpful jobs to be done content as well. And a lot of the content I just took and repurposed and made it engaging. And I loved it. This was all before AI. Imagine if I had AI.
I think you're touching on something really interesting, and I think it's scary for the next generation of marketers. We already had to do this by hand, right? But how do you learn how to do this, or how do you learn what good looks like when you've never had to do 300 pieces by hand? So I don't know where we're headed with marketing, but I think that I'm glad that I have done things by hand, and I have done PowerPoint 17 versions, and you go through that sort of pressure cooker that teaches you how to do this. And so, I mean, yes, AI takes all the friction out, but I think because you have that experience, it's incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. Yeah.
And then I have to be careful too, because I get lazy with AI too. Sometimes I'm like, let's turn this into a post, right? And then I read it after, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't even sound anything like me.
So right now I'm a solopreneur and I do everything myself. Besides, I do have a video editor because video editing is outside of my skill set. But what I try to do, I actually treat myself as two people. I have the writer Christine and the editor Christine, and I will never post something the same day. So I have to go back and read it with my editor glasses, because like you said, it's just too easy to just click post and then you look back and like, what? Why did I say that? So try that. Be, Nicole
Fact.
hat, with an editor hat and a writer hat. I literally do that in my calendar.
Your posts, though, I just have to say, sound like they're written by you. Like, I mean, I know this isn't about you, this
Yes.
show, but do you use AI much? Because they sound really human.
I spend a ridiculous amount of time in the post. I will say in every single post I do. So I will say that I was actually just writing down my basic flow would be like, what am I trying to say? What format or template or like image would go with that? And then does it sound like me? What is the hook? I spend a lot of time on the hook. And then I do like the editing at the end that I mentioned, like on a different day, I edit it. So there's a process, but it's me in every part of the process. And I know what I'm trying to get. And one thing that's really important in any AI that you use, if it's missing something concrete or if it's missing a detail, it could be a number, it could be a story, it could be something to me, I won't post it because to me that is something that's too fluffy. Even if it sounds like Christine, but it's missing that thing that only I could say, then I won't post it. So I think that it is important to me that I spend that time to make sure it does sound like me because at the end of the day, it's my face, it's my brand. And I think if you lose trust with people because once they know it's AI, I think they kind of discount what you have to say. And so clients I work with as well that I do LinkedIn content for, I just spend a lot of time. AI helps, but I'm still in there. I'm still really, really in there to make sure that every word, like there are words. I worked on this phrase like for probably 30 minutes, just one phrase, because I'm like, this is, it's an AI-ism. So like, what else can I say? What would that person say? And so I appreciate the compliment, but I could say it's because I'm spending so much time, so much time.
It shows, and really, especially in the age of AI right now. I was actually just at the podcast show in London, and
I am so jealous. Did you have a chance to see the Riverside team at all? I saw them posting all. I spoke with Kendall from the community team, and she's great. But I saw her posting that she was there. I'm like, if only I were in Europe, I would be there.
I have to say, I took a lot of those photos of her that she was on, where she was on the stage. Yeah.
Really, really.
Yeah, so I've also had Kendall on my show as well. And actually, one of the things Kendall mentioned in her panel, which has been sitting in my brain since the show, is that one of the best ways to stand out right now is to actually give ChatGPT something to take. Because is anyone using Google anymore? No. So, for example, to stand out online, share something. Hey, I was at the podcast show London, and this is something that happened to me, and this is something that marketers can do now. So when somebody's, and this is something unique. So when somebody's in ChatGPT, hey, what are experts saying, and how are they doing that? Maybe one of my answers will come up, per se, or things like that. So we can stand out by actually sharing our own points of view and our own unique experiences. And that's what Kendall was trying to drive home. Like, share your experiences as much as possible.
Exactly. And so I try to do that. I mean, not with every piece of content, but I really try to okay, they say to think about the customer, but we're actually saying the opposite here a little bit. Like when I'm posting, I think, how does this relate to me? Because how does that make me credible? So like if I was talking about YouTube thumbnails the other day, I actually started an A/B test on my YouTube thumbnails. The results aren't in yet, but basically like I had skin in the game of what I was talking about. I actually did the test so that I could have some credibility to say, hey, thumbnails are important. Okay, as a marketer, you know that, but like I wanted to run a test and prove that. So I actually would say that if you have content, the content I do actually influences the work I do as well. It's kind of like goes back and forth to make sure that I am saying something that is credible and is real. So I think that it may be harder if you're working with brands or founders because you can't tell them, oh, you have to also go do that. But I do it. Yeah, I try to make sure that the thing I'm saying is true and it's as real as it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you work with founders or brands, a lot of times what I've found from my own experience is that people want to be seen, people want to be heard, and people want to be understood. So this is basic humanness, right? And like as I said, it's really about the relationship building and getting people to a place where they feel safe to open up, right?
Yeah.
That's what I find the most, because sometimes I'll meet with the founder first and it's always about, we got to increase our bottom line. We got to get our sales and we got to be posting about as product. Nobody cares. Literally nobody cares about the product you're selling. People want to know how it improves their life, how it helps them. And if we can't do that in a post, then we share ways that they can actually connect with you as a human, because nobody wants to be sold to, as we know. Nobody wants to just buy crap. Nobody wants, like you said, you get messages in your LinkedIn selling to you every day. Nobody cares. Like nobody
Yeah.
actually cares.
If you were to, okay, we're talking about authenticity as a topic. Like, is there a way that you would define it? Maybe like a few words that would help to, if you're trying to talk to a founder and trying to say like, hey, this is what we're doing. Because I think that that's where sometimes there's a disconnect because the founder's thinking about the metrics you just talked about or selling. And okay, sometimes, yeah, we understand that. But in order to get there, we're saying you need authenticity. So like, how would you explain this to someone and make them care? Someone like a founder, make them care that this is important.
It's not easy. Some are more open than others, and some are more emotionally intelligent and connected than others. And this is not I'm saying, okay, if you're not this, you have to be this or that. My job
Yeah,
is
it's
to
not a
come in.
judgment. Yeah.
No. And some people are just more naturally at ease with other people and sharing and being vulnerable. Other people people feel that they need to have business and private, and people keep it more separate with that. So I've had some founders be like, shut me down, and it's only about sales and it's only about this. And it's like, whew. So my job is to come in and to ask questions that actually invite a different perspective or different way of opening up. And probably one of the easiest ways I start with is, how does this help your customer? And a lot of CEOs and founders want to genuinely help who they are serving and who they are helping. And so it's like, say your customer, I don't know, improved their sales by XXX. So why did that make you happy? And why did you start this product in the first place? And were you someone like this? Like, how did this actually make your life easier? Where did this idea come from? Sort of just drilling it down again, back to the why, back to the values.
It's interesting because I guess not every founder does a product that personally connects to them. But I think I heard recently that in Y Combinator, one of the criteria that they use to define, maybe it's a bonus point or something, if the product you're building is something that you personally have struggled with, because I think that's where that empathy comes from. And that's where the why is truly enmeshed with who you are as a person. So I think if you are a founder who created a product that you personally use, it probably makes it easier. Maybe for you, I was thinking of you and your clients. Like, you might find it very hard to work with someone whose why is completely disconnected from them. Do you find that to be the case?
Sometimes, but it's pretty rare, especially in B2B SaaS. Most founder, CEO have a vested interest in what they're doing, especially because of the hours that is put in. And there's usually a connection in some way to either the end goal or the customer or the product, because so much time and energy is spent that it's usually, if there's too much of a disconnect, then there's nothing, then it's just a job, right?
Yeah.
So most people I work with have some level of guiding purpose in some ways,
So, I mean, I asked that because I have worked with founders who, when you're doing their LinkedIn, let's say you're working with them on LinkedIn and you notice there's a disconnect actually between the business and who they are, it makes it quite hard to be authentic. And you end up, okay, there's some content you do that's like super hard sell. And then you find the stuff that they're genuinely talking about. Let's say, I don't know, it's meditation or something.
Yeah.
That, I had a founder that was really into meditation. That was the stuff that just resonated better even on LinkedIn than the business stuff. I wish that founders could see that if they can sort of combine those two, that's the best of both worlds, because people are smart. They can see what's authentically you, I think, out there in the world. Not every single time, but I would say for the most part, people know.
You know what? I worked with some C-suite as well. Some were very anti-meditation, especially in one of the programs I was running at one of the tech companies. And really, like, they could not see the connect between work and what we were doing. But the founder was totally on board with it. And the founder was like, yes, this helps our employees. This helps our stress levels. This helps our anxiety. This helps us come more together as a team. And he was very open with his comments and sharings and stuff on LinkedIn, and people loved it, right?
Mhm.
And then we got backlash from other people that were like, this should not be in the workplace.
Yeah.
And, Nicole is taking up company time and it's bad, but right. So you get the opposition, right?
You can't make everyone happy. I think with being authentic, do you feel that the fear that people have, okay, if I'm authentic, I'm out there talking about, say, meditation or whatever it is, could that make me then recoil and say, I'm not going to share that anymore because you're going to get more feedback on that. Like, and that's not going to be for everyone. And how do you deal with some of that? I don't even want to say it's the trolls. I'm not even going as far as to say that, but just the people who say, why are you talking about that? Why are you stay in that lane? Don't talk about this. Have you experienced that and how could you deal with that?
I had one actually from the company who left actually a bit of a scathing comment on a meditation post that I did once on LinkedIn. And people were like backlash. They couldn't believe he said that. And I was feeling so nervous. I was like, maybe he's right. And our head of people and culture at the time said to me, she's like, no, it's okay. He is allowed to have, of course, he is allowed to have his opinion and he's allowed to share that. And you are allowed to have that too. And it's this sort of diversity of opinions. And he wasn't rude. He wasn't putting me down. It came from a place that really resonated and believed with him. And he had his points. And I left it up and I was like, yeah, you know what? It's okay to have a difference of opinion. And maybe just because this doesn't work for him doesn't mean it doesn't work for us. And so we left it up and it was and I'm someone who used to take everything so personal. I am a high sensitive. I am an empath, if you want to use that word. I thought everything was about me, this people pleasing thing. And, but showing up more authentically online and being more of myself has lessened that sort of. And now I don't care as much what people think. And when you show people who you really are, who you truly are, and you share from a place that is real, your audience always finds you. They always find you, And it's like Rick Rubin says, I say this in so many podcasts, don't create for your audience per se, create for you. And when you do what you believe in, the right people are always going to find you. Look how you have grown your brand in a year.
Yeah.
Right? By being yourself and talking about what matters to you, And that's why people are drawn to you, Christine, because you show up every day. Hey, this is what's working. Hey, actually, this is what, I remember in an email you wrote me, you shared like, hey, I'm going to be moving and we don't have to put this on the podcast, but yeah, I'm going to be exhausted.
That's okay. Yeah.
And I was just like, cool.
And I'm so glad I did because, like, imagine I had pushed through it. That same week, my son got RSV and the whole family was down with illness. It was like, knew that was going to be a stressful period. And I'm like, I'm going to just talk to Nicole a month from now instead of pushing through it. And I appreciate that you were receptive. And look, we're still having the call, just in a different time frame than originally scheduled.
So something like that is what a founder could do. Hey, you know what? I was supposed to meet with, this person, this thing. I was actually exhausted and I was going through something. And you know what? I said to this person, I can't make it this time. Then you kind of go, oh, okay, I don't have to be perfect, right? And it gives your customer or your audience, remember, someone goes, okay, I can relax a bit more because they are showing that they aren't perfect as well. Yeah. And so you set that up so people feel comfortable. That's why I share all my shortcomings too, because I want people to feel that they're normal.
It's interesting having a podcast. I believe I'm at somewhere around 10 episodes or so. I genuinely do. I think everyone should have a podcast. I just really think that talking to people is so much fun. You learn so much. It's all, as a content creator, it also helps you create more content just because you have this great conversation and you want to share the best bits of it. But one of the things I do, people say, how do you choose guests? Because ultimately your content that you create from a podcast depends on who you speak with. I just get curious about topics. Right now, I'm curious about authenticity, about brand design. So someone I'll speak with later this week is about doing, brand and design as a differentiator for founders. So I just go learn from people that I'm interested in. And as you said, I'm not creating content to say, hey, what are you interested in? I'm just like, what does Christine want to know? Because somebody out there will probably want to know that too. And I think as marketers, sometimes we get too much into the, like, what does our audience want? And that's important, like sometimes, but sometimes it's just like, I am an audience myself, I guess, or I'm the best audience when I'm making content. So, and it just becomes more real. So not every episode is going to be super relevant to everyone, but it works. It's been working so far. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
And it's always about, I think I learned this from one of your posts. It's like, we don't know what's going to hit people. And we don't know, sometimes video, you get like 2 views, or,
Oh
you
yeah.
could write something and it gets like, it goes viral. But when I was at the podcast show, I had people come up to me and be like, hey, I saw that reel you did on why you don't cut your own hair. Or, hey, I saw this post about overcoming this illness that you had. And people I didn't even know, people that don't like my posts, people that don't comment, people I don't even know that I'm connected to actually know what I'm doing. So we never know who is watching and who is looking. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm starting a new job next week here in Berlin, and I was referred to the position from somebody who had read some of my posts on LinkedIn and said, hey, I love what you do, and actually shared their story with me. And she said, I would love to recommend you for this position. I had no idea this person even really connected
Yeah.
with, I mean, I sort of knew because she had, made a couple things like that, but you never know. You never know
You
who's
never
going
know.
who you're going to help by what you share, right? When
I think
you
this
are.
ties back to why authenticity is important is because it attracts people to you in a way that, I mean, as a marketer, you can spend all the money in the world running ads, doing this and that. But like, if you can attract people to you or your business, that is the goal of marketing at the end of the day. And so I am a marketer deep down, but I want to do meaningful work, and I want people to come. I want to work with the people that I want to work with that, have the same, let's say, the same way of thinking as me if I have the chance. And I think that's one way of doing it. So if you're a brand and you're looking for people, let's say you're looking for ideal customers, not any customers, but the ideal customers, then being authentic, oh my gosh, being authentic can help you do that. So I want to, since we're coming to an end here of our conversation, what would you say, I guess, if someone's still, I think it goes back to fear. I want to touch on that again. Like, how can you make the commitment that you're going to be more authentic and maybe take the first step? So you mentioned maybe some talking to ChatGPT or any other things that you could think of that help someone say, I know this is important, but how do I actually do that and get over that fear of being a bit vulnerable?
It's really committing to sort of like, I think, who was it? Martha Beck. I listened to her on a podcast recently with Mel Robbins, who's like my idol, my dream. My dream is to be on the Mel Robbins show.
I love that.
And yeah, she says to herself, like, make a commitment to not lie to yourself. She said she made a commitment for a year not to lie, and not to lie to herself, like, do I really want to talk about this? Like, honestly, do I really want to talk about this? And if it's like a hard no within you, just don't do it. Do I want to talk to Christine about, my show, or my time at the podcast show last week and everything I learned? Yeah. That's a full body yes. That's something I can create a post about, right? And that's something that's actually going to help people as well, because it helped me as well, So it's really about every time you say no to what is not aligned with your why and why you're doing it, then you say yes to what is really right for you. And then it will come to you. So it starts by really, I think it comes to really your own the self-respect, because that's a pretty big term, but it's about not abandoning yourself in every step of the way. And just because it might make someone else feel good, doesn't make you feel good,
I think it's easier and easier to go out there and say, hey, this content is working for someone. I'm going to take it and like make it my own. But I would run it through that filter. Like, very first thing you do, like, is it something I would even want to say? Is it something that represents who I am? So I think at the beginning of the journey, when I started LinkedIn, like, let's say last July, I think that's when I first started posting every single day. It was easy to just say, oh, this template works, let's do that. But then it just, even if it got, let's say it got some visibility, it didn't feel very good. It just didn't feel like it was something, like, I don't like talking about hiring, actually. Like, it was something that I worked in hiring as a company, but I didn't really care about hiring truly. So I just didn't really stop talking about that. Even, yeah, I think even something as simple as just like, I don't want to talk about that, as you said.
Totally.
Don't do it. Even though I worked for a company that did that, I found other things to connect with that the company did. It was about remote work, different things that I could genuinely say confidently. So yeah, that resonates with me.
I love that. And I used to talk about meditation a lot, especially meditation in the workplace. And then I went for a year where I totally went off my practice and was not meditating, and actually went through a bit of a burnout and everything. And people are like, oh, talk about your meditation practice. Talk about everything you're doing. That's, what you should be doing. Everybody misses that stuff that you did, Nicole. And I was like, I hate talking about it. I'm not practicing right now. I feel like an imposter. I'm just not doing it. Right. So, yeah, it's about not, I think it's really about this whole not abandoning yourself and really about self care. And I know a lot of this stuff might sound woo woo in a sense, but it's really about, yeah, not abandoning who you are, your values, your beliefs. Now before I post anything, it goes through 3 questions. Does this empower someone? Does this educate someone? Does this inspire in some way? And if it doesn't have any of those 3 criteria, then I just scrap it. And then it sounds like a template. And then I'm cranking stuff out fast through ChatGPT because I want to get a post out or something too. So yeah, I do the same thing sometimes.
One of the interesting things, I don't know if it's exactly relevant, but it touches on how I do content. And so carousels are very popular. And there are a lot of tools out there that help you create carousels, like use AI and create carousels. But I've never gotten them to work, I think, because they're very rigid, they're very templated. So if you've ever seen a template out there from me, it's literally me in Canva for hours doing it myself, because I think like when you're in the content, like when you're in it, you're living and breathing it, like it's the only way to get something that matches those filters, like you're saying. Like I go through similar questions, like, is this helpful? Am I saying anything? Is this something you could just, read in a blog post that you don't need to read in my carousel? Am I adding anything to the conversation? Like, I think you need to be in the content to kind of answer those questions. So I think that I use AI as much as I can, but I really feel like, I don't know, you have to kind of like struggle through it to sort of know if it's good content. So there are times where I will scrap something I've spent hours on. I don't know if you've done that as well. It hurts. It hurts to spend hours on something that at the end of the day, you're like, this actually isn't going to work. I'm going to just scrap it. But I think that's commitment. Like you said, like, how do you do this? How do you commit to authenticity? It's like being willing to scrap something if it doesn't end up working like you think it will, or it doesn't meet your filters.
Absolutely. And I always think of the words of Kurt Vonnegut, have the guts to cut.
Mm.
And always write first, edit later, or talk first, edit later.
Always edit. Separate yourself. Try it. If you don't, for everyone out there, I will say, literally try to like wait a day before you post something and come back with editing eyes. It changes. I'm not even the one who thought of it. I think it was Dickie Bush. I think that's who it was, the guy who does like the 30 for 30 content series. He said it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to do this for like a few weeks and see. And it makes a huge difference because it lets you cut things that you weren't willing to cut when you maybe were too emotionally invested the day before. It lets you see things with fresh eyes. So I will say that. If you do anything, just wait 24 hours before you post.
Another tip I have is to I know a lot of people use a lot of copywriting formulas, and you see them all on LinkedIn. Like there's ADA, there's PAS, all the big formulas. And it's easy to put that into ChatGPT and say, write it with this formula. And those formulas work for a reason. They've worked for, decades now.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's good to just scrap it and, start with basic storytelling. Who's the main character? Are people doing stuff? What are some sensory details? Get some inspiration, pick up a magazine, read a newspaper. That's where I usually get my best ideas from. So I say to founders sometimes, if you're struggling with what to write about, go read something, see what other people are doing, and, get off scrolling TikToks or Instagrams or things like that, which are designed to keep us hooked, and actually physically read something, which is actually really good for your brain, your eyes to move to the patterns, and it gets you in sort of that meditative state as well. And get bored. Allow yourself time to really do nothing as well. But that's for another podcast.
Well, I was going to say, I think boredom is a really interesting one, because when you think about deep thinking, and at the top of my pyramid of any content is literally like insight or like point of view, like that takes time. It sounds easy, but it's not. Like getting an insight that's worth sharing is actually the thing that comes from deep thinking. It comes from being bored, or comes from going for a jog. And it's like, that's the thing that makes the difference. And that's what all content should have. It should always have something you're trying to say. Yeah, it sounds obvious, but like I've done enough content where you're like, does this thing even say anything? If it doesn't have that, I think you need the space. You need the space to think deeply, be bored. That's where it comes from. So I agree with you on that. Totally agree.
Yeah. Get bored.
Get bored. We're leaving people. If we leave you with anything, go get bored. Sit for an hour. Sit for an hour, 2 hours. Well, Nicole, I have really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's very different than a lot of the other conversations I've had. Hopefully this won't be the last one, but I think maybe there's a way we can explore some more of these ideas, because I think they're not Usually I talk to people on the podcast and they're like, hey, do your YouTube thumbnails like this, or like very concrete, actionable things. And I think this was a bit more theoretical and just sort of like, this is why it's important. So maybe we can talk about, maybe we can do something together that would help people understand more concrete ways that they could use this. Because I think that it's one thing to say, go be authentic, but I'd love to like maybe have some resources or some other things people could be able to use. Because I believe this is super, super important. It's just not an easy thing to do. So let's think about it. I mean, we don't have to come up with what the answer is right now, but something comes to mind like 30 days of authenticity. Like we encourage people to post, or like there could be something fun we could do to really encourage people to practice this, to do this.
Absolutely. And even when I talk about this stuff, sometimes it's like people are like, who are you? What do you do? And it's like, I don't know anymore, right? Like, how do I
Yeah.
merge these ways of showing up? It actually comes from a place where I didn't feel authentic for a long time. And I was really terrified to show myself. I used to have such stage fright so bad. I would start shaking in front of a camera and get panic, anxiety, and I couldn't even speak. And then I found that as soon as I started sharing even about those little details, people wanted to know more. Hey, tell me more. I want to know more of these stories. I'm like, why? Why do you want to know? And I started to see how people reacted when I started sharing stories. So one thing you can try, if anyone's listening to this, just as a takeaway, if you're out for dinner or you're having coffee with friends or people you don't know that well, how are people reacting to your stories? Are they laughing? Are they maybe crying? Are they wanting to give you comfort? Are they wanting to know more? Are they feeling excited? Are they asking, like you say, for more resources or for more follow-up? So see how people react to you, because often we're so close to our own stories. We all have blind spots. We think nobody cares and nobody wants to hear them. So just maybe pay a bit more attention to how people react when you actually do share. And that was a big wake-up call for me. People wanted to know more. And when I would tell them things about myself personally, they asked for more and more. And I thought, why do people care about this?
Yeah.
Really? Because it helps them feel that they are connected and quote unquote normal and that they belong.
I mean, I think that's why a lot of, there's so many influencers out there, and you think about what the content they're actually sharing. They're kind of minute details about daily life or things like that. Less on LinkedIn, more so on Instagram. But I think it touches to that, like it's that normal, it makes someone feel normal by watching them. And also just is that connection. Like you're more likely to connect with someone who's sharing something you can relate to versus coming in there as I'm the expert trying to teach you something. And I think that's where I think people on LinkedIn could actually learn from the Instagrammers of the world, is just like be a bit more real, be a bit more like show the rough edges. You don't have to be an educator or you don't have to be a thought leader. You can be a real person too.
Yeah, and those are the creators that are really standing out. And I'll leave with this, Kendall is actually Kendall from Riverside, our friend.
Yes.
Literally, she treats people as your friend. When you meet Kendall in real life or on a podcast or whatever, you feel like she is your friend. Hey, how was your day? What kind of stuff are you working on? Who are you? You know what I mean? Where did you come from? Like sort of, and being genuinely interested in another person, listening for listening and not listening to think of what you're going to say next,
Yeah.
And yeah.
Listening is it's going to become it's very rare. Like it's getting rarer, I think, to genuinely listen to other people. So I think that's a good tip. Well, I will link your information below. Go check out Nicole. Follow her on LinkedIn, obviously. As I said, I'd love to collaborate and do something more and help folks maybe who are, 5 years ago, us, I didn't share as much 5 years ago. And it does take some self-work and some sort of reflection and a decision to want to put yourself out there a bit more online. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Christine.